A disturbing discovery in Ireland. A mass grave of children has been found at a site that was once a Catholic orphanage.
The discovery of an unmarked grave at a convent-run home near Galway, which contained the remains of hundreds of babies.
The finding supports a local historian's efforts to trace the fates of 800 children.
The remains of almost 800 children were found in a concrete septic tank at a former home for unmarried mothers.
A disturbing discovery in Ireland. A mass grave of children has been found at a site that was once a Catholic orphanage. 3 years ago, a local historian investigated and found death certificates for nearly 800 children who died at the orphanage from 1925 to 1961. This week, forensics officials confirmed those findings. Nuns ran the home where thousands of unmarried mothers were forced to stay as punishment. Many of the women were able to leave after serving their time. Their children were left behind.
The Irish government has ordered a nationwide investigation into homes for unmarried mothers run by the Catholic Church. It follows the discovery of an unmarked grave at a convent-run home near Galway, which contained the remains of hundreds of babies. Ireland's Minister for Children said the investigation would be the first of its kind.
It was felt that this, in the circumstances, was most appropriate, having regard to the fact that such a commission will have a full range of statutory powers in relation to documents, papers, witnesses, cooperation, and we feel that it's appropriate that it would be set up at the earliest opportunity.
Dublin has come under increasing pressure to examine the practices at the institutions and their high mortality rates since the discovery of the grave. As recently as the 1960s, unmarried women and girls were often forced to give up their babies for adoption. Either that or the children were said to have been treated as an inferior subspecies by the Church. Today's inquiry will also look into adoption procedures, burial practices and the reported testing of medicine on children at the homes.
The finding supports a local historian's efforts to trace the fates of 800 children who died at the facility between 1925 and 1961. The Irish government formed a commission in 2014 to investigate deaths at the Sun Succor's mother and baby home in County Galway. The children who died were aged between 35 weeks and 3 years.
The remains of hundreds of infants were lying in an unmarked grave. And now a significant amount of remains found in the sewers of a former church-run home for unmarried mothers have been confirmed as human. They're said to be newborns to 3-year-olds.
This news is very disturbing and will touch everyone's heart. The information I have received confirms these suspicions, and importantly, they trace the remains specifically to the period of the home's operation, rather than to earlier times in our history, such as during the famine.
Records show almost 800 children died at the home between 1925 and 1961. This man was born there and taken away from his mother as a baby.
I feel it wasn't her fault. It was the church, the state and this country that let her down. And I want an apology now because she didn't do anything wrong. She did not do anything, and I want an apology from the state and the church. So I can go back to her grave and read that over her grave, that she did nothing wrong whatsoever.
There was no immediate comment from the church authorities. The commission is investigating 17 other church-run institutions around the country.
The remains of almost 800 children were found in a concrete septic tank at a former home for unmarried mothers. The institution in Tuam, County Galway, was run by the Sisters of the Bon Secours between 1925 and 1961. Death records show that most died of malnutrition or disease.
What government is doing here is establishing the facts with a view towards ensuring that we can get to the bottom of this harrowing issue. It's a matter of great public disquiet and upset, not only for the families involved but for local communities. What we will have is a report to government before the end of this month and then advance matters further.
It was one of many homes in Ireland where around 35,000 unmarried pregnant women, including rape victims, were sent. They were regarded as fallen women, and their children were denied baptism and segregated at school.
These women want to know more about who they are, and as well as helping the living, they want to know more about the dead. They were all born or spent their earliest years at what was Ireland's biggest mother and baby home in the southern city of Cork. It was a place where pregnant women who weren't married were forced to go and then separated from their newborns. And in this wasteland, which used to be part of the home, they're taking the first steps to discover whether the nuns buried babies who didn't survive, unmarked and forgotten.
Very often mothers were encouraged to forget about a child that died. That's fine. It was a solution, it was a way out for them. Off they go, have a life.
And is that the reason why the church would have felt it appropriate to bury them in unmarked graves, do you think?
I think so.
Old graves leave a mark. Inside the grounds of Bessborough there are dents in the earth and round raised areas.
These are the particularly awful years in terms of death rates.
The records already show that hundreds of children died here, so they must be somewhere.
We have to hold people accountable for these crimes because there are mothers out there, there are siblings, there are grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins who do not know what happened to their loved ones.
Since it became clear that this could have been happening all over Ireland, the government has said it will hold an inquiry, but not even its terms have been set. It hardly looks full of urgency. There are many things you could say about the notional idea of perhaps hundreds of children's bodies being buried in the former grounds of a mother and baby home, but perhaps the most extraordinary is that the survivors of that home, all these women, are having to do the investigation themselves. There is absolutely nobody here from the authorities to help them. We went to try to speak to one of the remaining former nuns, Sister Sato. She still lives in Cork, and she was at Bessborough in the 1980s. She referred us to her lawyers, but in a separate phone conversation, she had this to say.
I don't know how many babies were buried there, but all I know is there are 2 crosses with the names on it. If other babies died, I don't know where they're buried. There may very well be, but I don't know.
Catherine, there I am. And there's my letters.
In 2002, however, Sister Sato was able to help Kathy find her medical history. She was born at Bessborough and immediately separated from her mother.
I'm your daughter. Huh? I'm your daughter. Yeah. Yeah.
They were eventually reunited after Kathy's mother had spent most of her adult life in a Catholic workhouse.
My adopted family asked about my mother. They told her she was dead. Her mother's dead. My mother wasn't dead. I hugged her in 2002 and said, "Hi, I'm back. I'm your daughter. And I love you."
The Catholic establishment here says all these things happened long ago, that the past isn't relevant to the present, but for these women, and many more like them, that's surely the biggest insult of all.
After a local historian found death certificates for 796 children, but a burial record for only 1 child. Suspicions of unrecorded and unmarked burials at the site in the west of the country have lingered for decades. The institution, run by nuns, was one of many mother and baby homes across the country where unmarried pregnant women were sent to give birth in an attempt to preserve the country's devout Catholic image. Excavations have been carried out at the site in recent months, but people who lived near the home said they have known about the unmarked mass grave for decades. 2 local boys reportedly unearthed the concrete-covered tank used by the home while playing in 1975 and found hundreds of children's bones inside. The tank has now been surrounded by a housing project. Radiocarbon dating of the samples recovered suggests that the remains date from the time the mother and baby home operated between 1925 and 1961.
A 25-year-old Nicaraguan woman died on Tuesday after she was thrown into a fire apparently to drive demons from her body. Authorities say witnesses saw the woman stripped naked before being burned.
The victim's husband said the mother of two was taken inside a church last week. Members thought she was possessed after she allegedly tried to attack people with a machete. An evangelical pastor has been arrested along with 4 other people. The pastor denied wrongdoing, saying the woman fell into the fire. He also claims the exorcism worked and that a demon exited her body.